Greetings, especially to my friends, and certainly anybody else. Nevertheless, relations, I think, can become very tenuous, and I have to accept responsibility for that. I guess it's because, although preoccupied by misfortune, I think it's fair to say misfortune, at least, I nevertheless do have a kind of agenda that is conditioned by what I'm aware of. And as I've said sometimes, my event horizon is anything that happens within this room and very little else. Although I know something about what influences events in the room in terms of, you might say, the local population. And in fact, I tend to think of the behavior or misbehavior of people locally as something that is influenced by people that I pay attention to in the media. And I guess a lot of people use the word media, first of all, to refer to legacy media, but mainstream media is pretty much figuratively represented by someone in Toronto on foot, wandering around with horrific traffic noises and more or less uninspiring environment. I think that many people understand why someone very unassuming would nevertheless be on foot that way. And I don't think I need to belabor all that, but I think those who take inspiration from that have problems of their own, because really I think of wandering around on foot in the traffic of any place similar to Toronto is what people are doing in places that are only recently being re-evaluated. There have been people on foot or moving fairly slowly through places that are as famous as Burbank, California, or Hollywood, or one place or another, Santa Monica, Santa Barbara, recently, and without making comparisons that some cannot easily make, nevertheless people can see what is offered and think through legacy systems in terms of where they are maintained. And if, for example, if half the people in New York City are below the poverty line, then I think that says a lot about the ultra elites who are maintaining their grip on legacy systems, doesn't it? In terms of a fantasy world, escapism would be what? Seeing a well-run dairy farm, sort of like Bonanza, only, better. A well-run dairy farm, part of a community of people who wield their influence not only in terms of fresh milk for any number, but also in terms of their investment in legacy systems. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington is really kind of corny now because, what puts a person in a congressional seat under the Iron Dome is not what Jimmy Stewart wrote about, or in terms of a script that he acted with, according to a script he had. And so I don't know, is it even less of a fantasy, to have these animated cartoons for what they're worth? Is it any less outrageous to suggest that instead of just, Berkshire Hathaway with all it controls in the hands of a very elderly man now, living in a house that costs, $40,000 back in the day. He didn't, scale up his lifestyle or whatever over the years into the caricatures that are running things from the West Coast somewhere. I don't know. I'm aware of how people feel about legacy systems, but I don't know why people would expect when the media combine so that so much of it is in the hands of a dozen companies. What would you expect in terms of people towing the line, in terms of what they espouse or acknowledge or aspire to? I don't think there's any question about any of that. But I can tell you, for example, some recent developments locally, for me, have been outlined wonderfully by a man named Robert in South Georgia. On a muddy road. It's an incredibly accurate scene where he just, almost like Sisyphus, he can't quite get over the muddy hill in his truck, on. And, well, it just tells a story better than anything I would watch, at length. Admittedly, nobody advertises in a way that would let me know of anything outside of France in terms of a movie that I might even be curious about. I don't agree much about the idea of Hollywood. There was a time when Hollywood was kind of like what some people call the blogosphere or vlogosphere, whatever. Now we have this entry-level thing where people can get started. Now, how do they get up to 2 million views or twice that? How do they do that? Well, it's not terribly complicated, but for some reason, the hit and run attitude of Hollywood is part of the stuff that has turned the heads of a lot of people whose investment is no more than something similar. In this case, for example, I have a little tiny camera with its own microphone made by LETSCOM. As far as I know, it's sold out of a distributor in Michigan, and it's a Chinese product, and I don't need all the rest that people use, and so what are people chasing after? I don't know, but I don't want to be explicit about what I think might explain 5 million views. I forget what the record is or something. The name is a household word in some circles. The most people watching somebody, and I think I looked at maybe 15 minutes of that, and then I look at others, and I don't know. I think I have to recast some of my own thoughts about optimism. Hollywood hardly exists except in the minds of the afflicted. It's like a house, hollowed out by termites. Potemkin Village, some tiny, delicate facade of sorts. And then, what if you get in your, your 2005 Ford, clean the windshield and even the side windows, and then just slowly move through a place and talk about the kind of people who maintain Potemkin Village. It's not because it's something profound, but it just brings to mind the fact, hey, wait a minute, these are people who put out their garbage. Look at this swanky place, and yet they wheel a tub of garbage to the curb like anybody else, or rather have some person do that for them, and yet when you drive by, there it is, same as somewhere else. That's not much. I mean, it's kind of vague, isn't it? About who they are and what they are. There used to be, that strange color to it. An old-fashioned bluish kind of cinemascope colors that they had for a show called Hazel. Hazel was a spastic character working as a servant in a lawyer's household, and just the whole predication, and then Beverly Hillbillies, with the banker who was groveling to keep all money in his bank, and just there was, for example, the most amazing show, Amos and Andy, which still isn't understood by a sufficient number, as far as I'm concerned. And now, a lot of people don't pay attention to daily soaps or anything. For example, Susan is a monster, and many soaps for years just had stupid confrontations, not much verbiage, but just so people paid attention to that. Anyway, a lot of people, would never think of slowing down enough to look at the atrocities going on in the name of Hollywood. Well, of course, with modern technology, people have been skipping things around, no matter the address used or anything else, all over the place. There's a road called 280, Highway 280 in south of Birmingham. There are many studios, where things originate, but they're not apparently coming from there. Nor is there a neon sign saying this is like what, Skull and Bones? No, they don't advertise, but down 280 there, numerous places, where something as innovative as stretch limousines show up. Now that has to be that is really a class act, isn't it? In terms of systems analysis and thinking through a lot of stuff, that really, in terms of pandering, what will people say? Well, we're going to go ahead and do this so that riffraff across the country will rent stretch limos and take each other out to McDonald's or something. I've seen some of that, and I hope I don't see it again. But anyway, basically what I'm talking about is so much mediocrity that there's a lot that can be said about these influencers who will not do anything that I might notice. I've talked about, if I show up in certain places, it really is like crashing a party. And it's happened too often, that I'm not interested, So I don't expect much anymore of influencers. Whatever they do, I'm sure, is more private than when they offer a nominal signal as if it's all they do, Sort of like, if Barbara Waters, Barbara, what's her name? Can't remember her last name. Anyway, the interviewer would have, President Ford or anybody since then, and and a few platitudes with what's going on in the Oval Office. Oh, a little of this, a little of that. I have the feeling that while nothing gets articulated much that isn't found in the party line that everybody's saying, you get the same information, dare I say, from the New York Times as from Barbara Walters, And I think the same thing is happening among vloggers and so on. Of course they don't want to be implicated in some of the stuff that isn't part of fake news. When we have the Dolly shutting down Baltimore Harbor by running into one of the support columns, and then we have all of the media talking about that for many days now and nothing else. What's not in the news? Outrageous stories about the inaction having to do with wars or a genocide or anything else. Instead we have what? The godsend. Salvador Dali solves multimedia problems among the people of Hollywood and everywhere else where only a few huge companies control an arm of big business. And people accept it. People talk about cutting the cord, in terms of the cable TV and stuff like that, and some are doing it. But then what do? It's hard to say. But there's a question that some people used to wonder about. There was a time when people said, all of this is for free. I turn on my computer, the courts have settled, this outrageous story about how Bill Gates was going to run the world with his browser instead of the independent browser and all of this. Once that's settled, then what? You use whatever browser you browse with, and you look around, and what do you see? So much ostensibly is for free. Now, some things are spun off. I've complained, for example, that every video editing suite that I've happened to have seen is more like a video game than something simply to do a few little chores. And I'm not interested. I won't be bothered by that. But prior to that, Microsoft had a perfectly good movie maker. Simple as idiot lights on the dashboard of a car. But it worked for me to the extent that I wanted to do anything. Now it's just a farce. Real Player and all that stuff, all that was for free for many years. All kinds of stuff, free. Well, of course, there was an ad here and an ad there, but so much was free, and still is. Now everything's monetized. Every little thing you want has a price tag, and you got to pay. If you are active on the internet, you had better have your means of payment at the ready, because you will be nickeled and dimed for everything you might want. That's slowly been happening, but to begin with, for years, stuff was free. Now there are paywalls all over the place. Well, I don't mind that. For example, I would like to support some people, but my situation has gotten really bad, and so I can't do anything that isn't more or less free. Well, what does that involve? It involves, so far, very basic services that a few companies offer, and of course they advertise expansive options that I can't afford, So I see the people, who have made the transition to making a living in terms of offering their opinions. But I've learned that they won't offer their opinions while I'm watching. Meanwhile, their opinions don't seem to reach any number of folks. The people here, for example, I had to, it's the first time I've done this, but garbage was collecting in my room since the middle of, actually this week, since about Wednesday, just piling up. And finally I just said this morning, this is, it's actually afternoon now, it's after 2 o'clock in the afternoon of Saturday, the day before Easter, I think it is. I was reminded of that the other day. Since Wednesday, garbage just was piling up, and nobody would take it out, and requests were ignored. The way they, part of the passive aggressive stuff here. So today, when the when the worker came in with my insulin, I said, "I'm sorry, I'm not going to take any medication until the garbage is taken out of my room." And she said, "Well, go ahead and let me give you this, and I'll do it after I give you the medicine." I said, "No, you're not supposed to take out the garbage for other people. There are people on the payroll." And a little dialogue, and she said, "Well, yeah, there are 3 people on duty now. What, playing cards or something? I don't know." I said, "Well, you tell them that I asked you to tell them, wherever they are, who don't answer the buzzer or anything else, that I'm not going to take my medication until the stench of garbage is removed from this room." And she said, "Okay." I said, "I'm sorry, but that's the best I can do." And a few minutes later, someone I'd never seen before, a stranger to me, had never seen the person who came and took out the trash. As she was gathering the trash up in a big bag and so on, I said, "Are you looking forward to Easter tomorrow?" She said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, I guess your whole family will go." And she said, "Yeah, I have 3 kids." She didn't say about what anybody else. I said, "Well, I guess they have their Sunday best for Easter." And she laughed and said, "Yeah, we like to wear our Sunday best on Easter." I said, "Well, I hope you have a good time." But that was one of the few times there was anything to talk about, around here. And I just couldn't think much positive about all that. It can't be a regular thing to do something that things have gotten that desperate. Things have gone downhill in my local environment quite a bit since events of October. And let me tell you, you talk about media. I don't know, when people have 5 million views or 5 million subscribers, and they say nothing if I happen to watch, then I figure, well, you talk about implications. I think there are implications, so I'm glad to say I'm not involved in the Easter business in Alabama, but I guess there's probably some pomp and circumstance, or what? On the media, there'll be people putting some of the music online. I'd have to say that some of it is the better part of the Christian tradition, but when it leads to events like what Robert did such a good job with on a muddy road in South Georgia, that to me was right on the money. I don't know of anybody in Hollywood who would talk about recent events any better than he did, and as far as I know, he's not necessarily going to divulge how it is that he is such a hard worker. But I guess he puts the interesting part to where it can be found, rather than to drop what he's doing to say nothing or do nothing on special occasions. So this is a special thing to say, just to get the trash taken out of the room. Isn't there a metaphor about that that I don't see in Potemkin villages? Someone on a electric bike in Manhattan gave me more information about the attitudes there than anything else in a long time, before he finally had to leave town, his town. mean, in a way you might say, a native of New York, and now he's moved to Texas. A lot of people move to Texas. There was a day when I tried to move here or there, and now, instead of running into what happened in Spokane, the other day I had to say, well, Spokane is on the horizon now in this strange place. What can Hollywood do about that? I think it's time to realize that demanding that Hollywood shape up is kind of silly, And in terms of pouring new wine into old wineskins, I think maybe the low entry costs for bloggers and vloggers is a good thing. But then, I have to try to take things at face value and not attribute anything especially good or especially bad to people who stop what they're doing if I happen to show any interest. I kind of do the same thing, don't I? I don't get into the particulars. I think maybe in some awkward way I've conveyed what I think is worth my concern, and at the same time I've said, I don't look forward to what's on the horizon that I was talking about just a few days ago, but I myself don't have any way to talk about the weather and do nothing about it the way everybody does. There are attempts sometimes. People will try, seeding the clouds with silver and other chemicals or elements, and that would precipitate rain or something. People try to change the weather. Most people try to get along with Mother Nature and Father Time. But it's true to talk about a bubble that people can live in. I've often said, it seems to me it's a little overdue for people to recognize that what they thought they fixed in terms of what? Elected officials or appointed officials, like back in the day with fire hoses and billy clubs. What's his name in Birmingham? The thug there, with the complete approval of the population, the majority, and the governor and all that. They even have a song, In Birmingham, they love the governor. But people think, oh, well, he's dead, and so are all the other criminals, thugs, and so on. So that taken care of. No, the South, the New South is the same as the Old South, but just not naive about the media. They know what they can get away with, and they surely do. The same as anywhere else. So there's a bubble involved. Birmingham is a bubble. Montgomery is a bubble. Atlanta now, though, is a bit different. The busiest airport in the world is the Atlanta airport, and it's hard to say exactly that it's the kind of bubble that I'm talking about provincialism, but even there's a bubble, and there's a fast track. There are people there who come up with the character who showed up in Aniata to manage the apartments. I mean, really a remarkable specimen. She and a fellow traveler, So even Atlanta, had a certain provincialism, and certainly that's true of New York and Hollywood, or L.A. People say L.A. instead of Hollywood. Well, you see, I'm not venturing beyond what other people do, really, about all these details, ruminations, the same as a cow. People think of me that way, I guess. Isn't that true? When they're not thinking of something worse. Yeah, the walls have ears, and I still practically might peel the paint off the walls, but in terms of the camera, well, I've said that I'm disappointed, and it's taken me over 36 minutes to say just about nothing, but they tell me I shouldn't even guess about what people do. I know that 2 platforms notified me that if it seems strange, just figure it out yourself. So that's what I've done.